Imagine an empire stretching for thousands of miles along the spine of South America. A civilization of millions connected by a network of roads rivaling ancient Rome. This was the Inca Empire, or Tawantinsuyu, a marvel of engineering, social organization, and culture. But in less than a generation, this vast empire would crumble, not just from outside force, but from devastating internal strife and an invisible, deadly enemy. This is the story of the fall of the Incas, a tale more dramatic than any fiction. Our story begins around the year 1527. The Inca Empire is at its absolute peak under the rule of the Sopa Inca, Huayna Capac. He's a respected leader, having expanded the empire to its greatest extent, from modern-day Colombia down to Chile. The empire is a powerhouse, with a sophisticated government, a food surplus system that prevented famine, and architectural wonders like Machu Picchu that still leave us breathless today. From the capital city of Cusco, the heart of the world, it seemed the Inca were invincible, their dominion destined to last for centuries. But a shadow was creeping over the land, an enemy the Inca couldn't see and had no defense against. European diseases, particularly smallpox, had arrived in the Americas long before the conquistadors themselves reached the heartland of the empire. Carried along trade routes, the virus swept through the population with terrifying speed. The Inca people had no immunity to these foreign sicknesses. It is estimated that smallpox wiped out as much as 50 to 90% of the population in some areas. It was a demographic catastrophe on an unimaginable scale. This invisible plague didn't just kill commoners, it struck at the very top. In 1528, the great Sopa Inca, Huayna Capac, and his chosen heir both fell victim to the disease. His sudden death created a massive power vacuum. Without a clear successor, the empire was thrown into chaos. Two of Huayna Capac's sons, half-brothers Huasca and Atahualpa, both had legitimate claims to the throne. Huasca was based in the traditional capital of Cusco, while Atahualpa, a brilliant military commander, had control of the powerful northern army in Quito. What followed was a brutal and bloody civil war that tore the empire apart from the inside. For 5 long years, the brothers' armies clashed in a devastating conflict. The very infrastructure that made the empire strong, its roads, its communication systems now facilitated its destruction. Cities were razed, and countless lives were lost. This was a society turning on itself, weakening its foundations just as a new threat was sailing over the horizon. By 1532, Atahualpa had finally defeated his brother Huasca and captured him. He was the undisputed victor, the new Sopa Inca, as he and his massive army of 80,000 warriors made their way towards Cusco. To formally claim the throne, they stopped at the city of Cajamarca to rest. Atahualpa was confident, triumphant, and completely unaware that his destiny was about to collide with a small, audacious group of strangers. Enter Francisco Pizarro, a Spanish conquistador. He wasn't a nobleman or a great general. He was a hardened, ambitious adventurer who had heard tales of a kingdom of gold in the south. With a tiny force of just 168 men, a few horses, and some primitive firearms, Pizarro marched deep into the heart of a mighty empire. On paper, it was a suicidal mission. 168 men against an army of 80,000? The odds were beyond impossible, but Pizarro had a few key advantages. He had steel armor, steel swords, and horses, which were terrifying alien creatures to the Inca. He also had the element of surprise and a playbook written by Hernan Cortes, who had conquered the Aztec Empire just a decade earlier. Pizarro understood the importance of capturing the leader, the divine king, to decapitate the entire political structure. On November 16, 1532, Pizarro invited Atahualpa to a meeting in the main square of Cajamarca. Atahualpa, believing his vast army made him untouchable, agreed. He arrived in a magnificent procession, carried on a golden litter, surrounded by his nobles. With thousands of his warriors in the square, he was expecting a diplomatic welcome, not an ambush. Pizarro had hidden his men, his cavalry, and his cannons in the buildings surrounding the square. A Spanish friar approached Atahualpa, demanding he accept Christianity and pledge loyalty to the Spanish king. Atahualpa, through a poor translator, was confused and offended. He reportedly threw the Bible offered to him onto the ground. That was the signal Pizarro was waiting for. Suddenly, the cannons roared, the muskets fired, and the Spanish cavalry charged into the stunned and unarmed Inca crowd. It was a massacre. The enclosed square became a death trap. The Spanish, protected by their armor, cut down thousands of Inca nobles and attendants in a matter of hours. In the midst of the chaos, Pizarro's men fought their way to Atahualpa's litter and captured him. The God King, the center of the Inca universe, was now a prisoner of a handful of foreigners. With Atahualpa captured, the massive Inca army outside the city was paralyzed. Their leader was a hostage, and they didn't know how to react. Atahualpa, ever the strategist, noticed the Spaniards' obsession with gold. He made them an astonishing offer. In exchange for his freedom, he would fill a large room once with gold and twice with silver. Pizarro agreed. For months, a river of treasure flowed into Cajamarca from all corners of the empire. Temples were stripped, and priceless works of art were melted down into bullion. It was one of the largest ransoms in human history. The Inca people complied, desperate to free their king. The ransom room was filled, fulfilling Atahualpa's side of the bargain. But Pizarro never intended to let him go. The Spanish saw Atahualpa as too dangerous to be left alive. They were a tiny force in a vast, hostile land, and Atahualpa's release could easily mean their own destruction. They put the Sopa Inca on a sham trial, accusing him of treason, idolatry, and the murder of his brother Huascar, who had been executed while in captivity. Atahualpa was found guilty and sentenced to be burned at the stake. To the Inca, being burned was the most horrific fate imaginable, as they believed it would destroy the soul and prevent passage to the afterlife. In a final, desperate act, Atahualpa agreed to be baptized as a Christian. His sentence was commuted from burning to strangulation by garrote. In August 1533, the last emperor of a free Inca nation was executed. The death of Atahualpa was the fatal blow. The empire, already weakened by disease and civil war, was now leaderless and disoriented. The Spanish installed a series of puppet emperors, but the real power was in their hands. They marched on the capital, Cusco, and with the help of local tribes who had been subjugated by the Inca, and were eager to see them fall. They conquered the city. There were still pockets of fierce resistance. For nearly 40 years, a rump state, the Neo-Inca state, held out in the jungle fortress of Vilcabamba, launching guerrilla attacks against the Spanish. But in 1572, the Spanish finally captured and executed the last Inca leader, Tupac Amaru, extinguishing the final ember of the once great empire. The fall of the Inca Empire wasn't just a military conquest. It was a perfect storm of disease, civil war, and a cunning, ruthless invasion. It stands as a powerful reminder of how even the mightiest civilizations can be fragile, and how quickly a world can be turned upside down. The legacy of the Inca, however, lives on in their incredible architecture, their resilient descendants, and the enduring spirit of the Andes. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Let us know in the comments what historical event you'd like to see covered next. See you in the next video.